taking.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh,
okay.
I guess
Taker
Guy's doing
records
then.
it and does the note summary. So
Okay. So Guy, I don't have to record it in addition, right? Because
I don't think so.
that's the one you'll post. Okay.
That's
So
what
Neil
I've been
gave
posting.
me,
Yeah.
Neil gave me the admin rights for today because he had to leave.
Very good.
So now it's recording. Okay. So everything you say can be held against you at this point. But I was trying to figure out how long we've known each other because I met you, I think, right when I started Bravo Tech.
Yeah, that's been a long time.
I've been there 8.5 years now, which it really is hard to believe.
Yes. And I used to come to Bravo Tech way before that
I bet you did, yeah.
for other events and
Yeah.
so Bettina, I as I told you, I have no idea about people's backgrounds other than knowing that they're all SIM. So I'm just
Actually, they're in
gonna
Utah, they're AIM, not SIM, but same thing or similar thing.
okay. All our technology folks. So
Yes, exactly.
I'll
Exactly.
make a bunch of assumptions.
Yeah, we got a nice little crowd here. Hi, everyone. Mike, do you want to kind of kick it off too? Because Mike's our president of the committee here, or the AI SIG group. Oh, you're on mute, Mike.
He's not on mute. He just can't speak to us.
Huh.
Type.
I'm not so good in sign language, sorry.
You better just take it, Bettina. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, should we get started then?
Yeah.
Okay, well, great. So welcome everyone to the AI SIG this Friday afternoon. And as you know, I think most of you I've seen before. What we do is every other week we have a speaker, and then the weeks in between we have open discussion. And Mike is our fearless leader of the group this year. He's the newly elected chair.
Fearless and voiceless leader now.
Yeah, a little voiceless right now. And I don't know where Sean is. Sean and I are the two program co-chairs, so we're always looking for interesting speakers. So if anybody has any other suggestions, please let us know. But today we have Babar joining us from Dallas, Texas. I think most of you know that my little firm, Bravo Tech, is based out of Dallas. We're an IT staffing firm, and I'm spending more and more time here in the lovely state of Utah, in the snowy capital here. And but the nice thing is this is virtual. And we used to have, before COVID, we had a very big building in Dallas, and we had one whole corner was dedicated to event space. And we would host a lot of professional groups and let them meet there free of charge, which is always nice. And Babar was part of the Dallas AI group then. And this when I first met him, and he met there well before I started working there, which has been over 8 years now. And so I know Babar's currently at IBM, and but he's also the co-founder of the Dallas AI group, which has a huge amount of members, and they're continuing to grow and meet and have all sorts of meetups in Dallas area. So Babar is going to share with us the productivity of AI and some suggestions, and share also a little bit about the work he's doing at IBM, as well as a little background on the Dallas AI group and what they're doing in their group, which I think is at this point a little bigger than ours group here in Utah. So Babar, I'll hand it off to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the intro. Let me share a few recycled slides so you don't have to look at me all the time. Let's see. Hopefully you can see these.
Yep.
Okay. So my apologies if the topic is not really interesting. We just had to come up with something. Bettina kept asking me, and I figured, who doesn't want to be productive, right? So let's just do something around it. But feel free to stop me at any time and, take me in the direction that you are really interested in. Because as I was telling Bettina, I got so buried in work this week that I couldn't create the actual slides that I wanted to. Um, in case you have questions after that, Bettina has my contact information and my LinkedIn is here. So you just always love it when people, stay in touch and discuss things. So, and you can also find me through Dallas AI, which is just a meetup. We try to meet in person every month and discuss something around AI. I had worked in data analytics space a while ago, and I still continue to do that through IBM. Bettina uh, thought that it would be interesting if I shared a couple of things about what I do. So at IBM, I help our customers adopt and deploy AI. So that means that I get to see a lot of things which don't work. And I get to see a lot of the reality versus the hype. And I'm kind of happy to share. And, in case you have any of you are skeptical about AI, I'm happy to share my skepticism with you. So not here to promote AI in any shape. On the side, I also work on a lot of content creation for people who are trying to learn AI. A lot of these people are non-technical, so I try to kind of create content which helps them get started with AI and kind of learn about that. So, AI is a lot of different things to a lot of people. And given this short time, I'll not be able to discuss a lot of different aspects of AI, but I just wanted to mention that what you see in the media is certainly not anywhere close to reality that we see. I had some people reach out to me to ask about like which stocks to buy for AI to get rich, and I'm utterly incapable of giving them any advice because the last time I tried to do it for myself, you know, I lost money because I know one company which is not doing that great on an AI, but the market hype is such that its stock keeps going up. And there are a lot of skeptics, a lot of critiques on AI, which you know uh, we have to keep in perspective. And I always try to balance that. So for today, I wanted to talk a little bit about all the experimentation that people are doing. And I wanted to set that stage and then come up to the different kinds of productivity exercises happening at companies, at individual levels. And then I wanted to just talk a little bit about what may be the right way to add value from AI. Make a few recommendations and maybe give you a few resources from. Again, it all depends on where you are in your journey. Obviously, I would not know if some of you may be experts and gurus, and some of you may be just, beginners. But I'll very quickly go through a couple of these basic things and then jump right into some of my point of view because I think that's probably um, of interest, and then I'll open it up for questions. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
Anything that you want me to stress, emphasize, skip?
Yeah, does anybody want to add something here?
I think this is a great agenda. I'd love to pick your brain on these things.
Absolutely. Okay. So this is a, a slide that I made to just level set on what are these AI models. In our jargon, we call them foundation models. And these are called foundation models because unlike the previous phase of AI where you had to train the models every time using a lot of effort and labeled data, this new class of models that ChatGPT and others are based on, these are pre-trained and sort of come ready for a lot of the off-the-shelf work. And these have been the biggest contributor to the current craze of generative AI, where you can actually create content. Unlike the last generation of machine learning and AI, which was able to classify and predict, but not really create new stuff. So in 2023, one of these investing firms came up with this landscape of AI applications, which is still true, but now this level of sophistication as well as the level of issues has increased a lot. And Bettina, I'll finish up these slides over the weekend and send it to you, so everybody can have that. I try to put in links and everything so that you can kind of see.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, but to keep it light, our fate and everything is depending on AI. Even the people who write these little notes in these cookies, they are figuring out that AI can help them and they can become more productive. But the reality is that we are not going back to the old ways of doing work. Whether it's research, writing something, brainstorming, analyzing, AI is going to just be there. Whether it's of any use today or not, it's definitely heading in that direction. A lot of these visuals and the hype that you see in the market is overselling what AI can do today. But I will not be surprised if AI actually gets better and surprises again at doing what it can do.
Seems like a lot of the sales pitches are for what they think they're going to go to next, right? Because it's moving so quickly.
Yes, and a lot of the hype actually comes from the vendor side, because they want you to buy today, and there's a fear that in the market from the buyers, the consumers, that if they don't, they'll be left behind. So there could be some element of truth, but I think today is more about experimentation and careful selection of where to use AI and figuring out how much value does it bring to you today. And that really requires some work, right? So you can't outsource it that easily. That's the tricky part.
That because
For
it's
example,
just,
yes,
go ahead. Is that because it's so unique to each business, each organization, figuring out how AI works within their organization, how its data is that's a kind of a one-off that you have to do the work. You can't just build a tool that everybody can use that way.
Yes, everybody's requirements can be slightly different, and there are some industry level capabilities that you can explore, and that's where some of the experts can help out, because there are many times when we go to customers and they want to do something for which AI is just not the right thing to do. It doesn't make sense from a technical perspective, from a cost perspective, from an ethical perspective. So I think that's where the key is, to really see where and what type of AI will make sense for a given use case, and does it make sense today or should they wait? I'll give you an example. Maybe you've seen the phrase AI agents. These are considered sort of the new version of RPA, where they can just be autonomous and can do things on your own. So let's say that I want to create a trip itinerary. It's kind of complicated. I'm going to multiple cities. I have specific requirements. I have dietary restrictions. and I want to optimize everything for cost. So I don't know if you ever used one, but I'm old enough to remember the actual human travel agents.
Yes, so am
Yes.
I.
So in 1997, I was a grad student. So I went to the student travel, services, and there was a travel agency, and the lady there recommended, hey, go to this nice island in Florida. It's not, too busy. It's not too expensive, and great. So in 1997, that was the right thing to do. And now, 28 years later, we have been promised these agentic AI, where you just tell the AI and then it will have all these little agents working on this problem set. And one agent will understand my intent, other will break it down into smaller problem sets. Then one will go and actually look at airlines, other will go and look at the hotels, third will go and look at, all these um, gifts that I should get for my wife to keep her happy, all that kind of stuff, right? So you could technically do all that, but the challenge is today's AI makes so many mistakes. It's not really reliable and trustworthy. So I like to, use the analogy of nuclear reactors. Yeah, you can get cheap electricity, but if you're not careful, they can be really hazardous. So um, as long as you have the right guardrails, you can actually make use of AI for specific things where it will make sense. So I use a very simple framework. And in this case, I'm limiting this use case or framework to large language models such as ChatGPT or Claude or Google, where if you are just exploring at a high level that you want to see if it's feasible for a given use case to use these models, then essentially kind of start with first question is this something where you are brainstorming or you're using AI as a thought partner? That's great, yes. But do you actually require accurate or factually correct information? This would be, for example, the lawyers, right? In the last Dallas AI meetup, I met a legal recruiter who was telling me that, it's so hard to find these people. And some of the lawyers, they wanted to use AI, but they don't want to use it because they heard that someone used it and AI made up some stuff and they got in trouble. Right. So part of the problem actually is with the person who used it and just copy pasted, right? So you can, that kind of goes against common sense, especially if you're a lawyer, that you need to be careful about this, but that this is where it is. So I don't know about how much you have played around with AI, but the one of the most common challenge is to use AI as a search engine where you look up information on, some facts or use it to kind of look up Wikipedia. That is not how it works because it is probabilistic model, which is just coming up with one word at a time and putting together something that appears to be coherent and meets whatever you said. So it has nothing to do with factuality. The second thing is whatever you are doing, you need some sort of filters and guardrails. It could be against bias, it could be against toxic content, could be against harmful content. So when you work with the models like ChatGPT and others, they have layers and layers of these filters and guardrails. And even then, things slip through. But um, did any of you use ChatGPT in like late 2022 when it came out? Like, November, December, or like the first quarter of 23?
Yeah, I did.
So you may recall that in the beginning, people were kind of having fun because they were able to kind of make the model come up with something that was not appropriate.
Yeah, you can actually convince it that 2 + 2 = 27.
Yeah,
Just any number you could, if you said it to it enough times, it would start to believe that was the truth.
right.
Well, and it was a name. It was like Dan or something. There was like a method you could use to basically break down all of the guardrails.
Yes,
I remember trying it out a few times.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Jailbreak it.
Yep. Even now, sophisticated hackers do it. But so these are the kind of things that if you're aware of, you wouldn't even worry about it because you know that this model is not the right use case for that. There are also some legal and compliance requirements, either based on the data that the model is using or based on your industry. That's kind of really specific to your environment. So healthcare, finance, and all that. The next question is the answer really explainable or not? And if there's a need for that. So if you're just looking for a new pet name or you are creating marketing content, really you don't have to worry about these things. But if you're doing some sort of analysis, which a lot of people do with these models, then you do need to worry about it. And finally, every model will have some issues. The question is, are you able to live with the harms or with the issues? What happens, if 1 out of 100 is wrong? Or what happens if, in some use cases, 2 out of 1,000 will be too much? So think of like autonomous driving and the AI that controls it. The bar has to be really high. So now that, we've kind of taken a look at the right ways to use it and all these caveats, let's kind of go towards today's topic of how are people using it and what are the different ways that it can. So one of the most common use case that I work with my customers at work is helping companies make use of their proprietary data. So as we briefly touched upon, the generic models that are available in the market, whether they are proprietary like OpenAI or open source like Meta's Llama, they have been trained on public data. They have, seen videos, they have read books, they have ingested the internet, but they don't have access to your private company data, right? And that's where the real value is for companies, right? But in order to make that data part of this whole AI cycle, you have to let the model go through that. So for some companies, it's okay to open up and share that data with the provider. For others, that is a complete non-starter, right? Think about some of these, companies on Wall Street, like hedge firms and all. They do not want to take any chance that their data will be, in the cloud and shared with, potentially could be shared with others. By the way, there has been a lot of news reports about data leakage and all that, one company's data, if it accidentally gets shared, then it shows up in somebody else's prompts. So that has actually happened. So what the companies ideally want is sometimes they want to have an on-premise installation of these models and they want to run the whole workflow over there so that their data never leaves their data center. In other cases, companies could host an open source model on one of the private cloud vendors and take the security precautions there to have a completely, independent instance so that they're not really sharing any of the infrastructure with others. So it all depends on sensitivity, right? But the idea is that if you want to be able to make use of your own data, then this generation of AI can really help in getting you that information that was simply hard to get to before.
A question about that.
Yep.
Real quick. So how if I've heard of that before, like prompt leakage, where private data is put in. If the training phase is different than the model use, how is that possible? Like I've never understood that.
So if the scenario is that you have your proprietary data and you want the model to learn from it.
Isn't the training phase like a discrete phase? I guess they don't train on the fly, do they?
No, usually there is a distinct phase. So the initial training is usually called pre-training because a lot of that is using semi-supervised or unsupervised methods. And then there is a way to train the model to actually give you useful answers back. That's instruction tuning. But the phase that we are talking about is that this is data that the model has not seen before. There are a couple of different ways to append that data to the model or provide that data as a context and let the model run, use that as an appendix. And the third and the most expensive way is to actually retrain the model. So essentially adding that training data to the model and the whole model changes based on that. So now literally you have a new copy of the model that is specific to you. So I'm sure all of you know the concept of open source software, which in the pre-AI days was pretty well understood concept. The challenge with AI is that there is no specific code that you can open source. It's the data and it's the neural network with its weights and biases combined called parameters. And then the way you apply it. So when the companies open source, they don't have to open source everything. At the minimum, they need to open source the weights, which allows anybody to run, but their results could be different from the original model provider because they may be doing something slightly different. And these models are known to be highly sensitive. So that adds to the confusion. But Matt, to kind of simplify the answer, there are ways to do that. Some are expensive, but they give you better performance, and others are relatively cheaper and they can also be valuable. It just depends on how much time and money are you willing to spend on this. But I'll talk about this one approach, which is called retrieval augmented generation. It's a mouthful. It doesn't really mean much, but essentially it's saying will um, create a numerical representation of your data, put it in a special database called a vector database, which captures the semantic patterns within your data. And using that vector database representation of your data, now you can get results such as questions and answers from that data or any kind of analysis that you want to do on that data. So it's not that you are changing the model in any way, but you are interacting with your own data through this approach. So I pause here just to make sure I didn't lose anyone or if there are any questions.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think what my comment was really, or my question was really about, like in early days, everyone was worried, hey, we need to have not let employees use it because if you put company data in here, then it's going to be exposed. I think everyone points to like there was a story about Samsung engineers that put something in, but I've never had anyone be able to really explain how that could happen, just from a prompt showing up in other people's results because the model isn't trained on the fly by that prompt. I'm talking about public models.
Mm-hmm. So I think the public models, they are black box, right? So we don't know how they are tweaked, but the idea is that when people interact with a model, it creates the feedback loop. If the answers are good and the questions are good, the model becomes better. And the data is used to retrain the model. And perhaps they have set up these kind of batches in which the model runs and learns from the answers that it's giving, and people are giving thumbs up or thumbs down. Many of these models have explicit mechanisms to do that. So more data, better model, more users, more feedback, better model. So that's how some of the sensitive data, if it goes in the model, it can go to the model's memory, and then the model can use it. Okay. So kind of going back to what this slide is, that remember I talked about that companies are trying to get the value, they're trying to increase productivity. So think about this scenario where you have 1,000 customer service reps, and every time they get a question from a customer and they need to look up some user manual, they go and they do search and they try to figure out the answer. That was the old days, right? But let's say if the AI has done all the work for them, all they can say is, generate an answer, and AI can actually be listening to the call. They know what the question is. They can search the internal data and come up with an answer, and then summarize that answer and provide the response. And at that point, do we really need those customer service reps? Right? You could have a chat interface where people could ask these kind of complicated questions, and the AI can just respond to that. The other day, I heard NVIDIA CEO talk about this $1 trillion customer service industry and how it's going to get all disrupted. So everywhere from communication to sales, marketing, product, and analysis, professionals are using AI to do part of the work.
A question on the chat bot that you
Yeah.
mentioned. I've heard that use case. I've seen it. I've seen it implemented or attempted to be implemented many times.
Yeah.
And even though I hear that obviously that's a pretty clear and simple or obvious use case for the LLMs, I still have not seen it done with any true quality or effectiveness. It still frustrates the living daylights sometimes when you're trying to get something and it just can't. It like wanders off into who knows where, And so I just haven't seen anything that's of high quality. Have you or can you point me to something that I could look at that's actually well executed?
So I actually agree with you that it's not there yet. But for narrow
Okay.
use cases where the domain knowledge is limited and there are enough guardrails, then it can handle certain questions. So in the real world, there's only a subset of work that AI can do well. So when you cannot put these kind of systems in front of a customer because you don't know what the
Right.
customers are going to do. All you can do is that okay, if the customer is just going to ask, questions about these areas where, I know my AI is reliable and can do that, then let it go and do that because even that can be very valuable. So what I see happening a lot is that companies are using these systems for internal use cases. Like let's say ask HR.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I could see it
I
being
go to
really
ask
good for a
HR.
customer service agent
Yeah,
to use, right? An agent could use it
right.
who is actually interfacing with a customer. I can see and
True.
have seen some pretty good improvements where there's a specific domain and that agent knows the domain language
Right.
that will actually get them to the correct information, where a consumer wouldn't
Yeah,
necessarily have the right domain language to support that.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what my experience has been is that, we're a business to business company,
Mhm.
and it doesn't work well for those types of use cases. It's really a transactional thing where you're just relaying facts or simple actions. But
Yeah.
where we have seen a lot of success is using those AI tools to enrich the knowledge and context that our agents have so that when they do interact with our customers, they are just better prepared and can serve them more quickly.
Yeah. Yes, that's consistent with what we're seeing in the industry. And obviously, the nature of these models is such that you can't always control. That's a huge problem, right? So like sales, for example, a lot of the sales content, sales collateral, that's that's like, stuff where it's not a big deal because they're not dealing with specific facts or things like that. It's essentially it's a narrative and it's following up on things and all that. So like these meeting notes and follow-ups and action items, just or creating custom content from specific libraries, all of that is really good. And then enhancing CRM, figuring out which customers to reach out to, all of that. That's the kind of thing that technology in general and some of the automation can be quite helpful. So, so if you look at different roles, I just, came up with a few. Um, Consultants are using AI quite a bit because, they do a lot of knowledge work. Project management and, just doing all sorts of tasks related with that. And then product managers, right? So for developing either new products or for adding AI to existing products is a really interesting application of AI. Because with these kind of generative models, you can do research, you can brainstorm, you can create documentation, you can do a lot of analysis. So it helps you become really productive. And there are a ton of resources out there, many courseworks. Actually, I'm doing a course in Dallas in April around this, AI for product managers. And now we are seeing some really impressive multimedia capabilities, including AI to create diagrams, illustrations, charts, and of course, the images and the speech and the video that AI creates, they are getting really, really good. So I stole this one from Twitter. Oh, no, X. Keep saying it Twitter. So it's all based on prompts. And I don't know how many people are using these, but I think just for fun stuff, this is pretty interesting. But slowly, I think these are disrupting the design world, the media world, how a lot of these content is being generated. And a lot of the content that you see on the online has elements of AI generated factors in there. But one thing that has really changed is that a lot of these, the chatbot focus has really moved to this conversational AI, whether it's for customer service or for other things. And conversational AI actually is dialogue focused. So whether you are saying something or you are typing something, these models can pick it up and do some work, which means that we have to learn how to do prompting. So there's a lot of talk about prompting and whether it will stay or it will not stay. But the reality is that just as we use language to communicate with people, we will be using these prompts to work with AI, which means that a lot of things where we used to actually write explicit instructions, whether it was code or requirements or some other kind of manual work, we can now create these prompts and have AI do the work for us. And this is where, I think somebody said that people who are good at asking the right questions, like the service reps who know their domain, they can get the benefit out of it. And that's the reality of AI. The more experience you have, the better questions that you can frame and how you refine your questions, that determines the quality of things that you get with AI. You can have, the exact same model and then have a novice person and an experienced person approach the same problem with very, very different results. I mean, there have been studies that have been done on, architects, engineers, doctors, technical people, developers, lawyers, and the most value is from people who know how to use these tools. And here's the interesting thing. As long as you have a high level idea of the problem, you can ask these AI models to tell you what to ask them.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to write it. And so every day there is a new tool in the market. Sometimes there are multiple ones in the day. And all of them are trying to figure out how to attack this problem, how to make it easy. And the reality is that these models are so big and so complicated that we don't really know how they work. But we know that when we prompt them in a specific way, they come up with something really good. And if we don't prompt them in a certain way, then their results can be mediocre or sometimes completely wrong. So now, this prompting has become a new thing where, if you go to YouTube and there are people who say, use this prompt. This is the only prompt that you ever need to learn. Never, this changed my life. All of these like clickbait videos are there because, yes, prompts can make a big difference, and a lot of people are doing it as a sort of a business. Any questions on the prompting side of things?
It seems like we could have a whole hour just on prompting in the future. That's very interesting.
Oh yeah, I mean people pay like thousands of dollars just to learn prompting, because what you can do is you can write a prompt and create a whole video.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to tools like Sora, um, you know, you can just have a whole description, and you can say, here's the the description of the scene, here's the lighting, here are the effects, here are this the mood, and this video will be created based on your description. So and then the interesting thing with these prompts is that it doesn't have to be a one-time thing. You can write a prompt and then you can refine it, and you can continue that process till you actually get what you want. And then within these prompts, you can have variables. So these are not always static. These can be dynamic. So you could, you can leave a little bit of flexibility in there, and there are tools who let you do that. But and you can kind of change these prompts together. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do there. So let me recap a few things. I think we all know that today's AI is not at a point where it can actually reliably solve the problem. But I think even with a lot of flaws, it gives you an ability to do some really interesting things. So in case you have not tried out some of the newer models, or not, tried out the prompting for some of the image models or the video models, give it a try. I'll send you some um, links and resources, or you can just search and find a ton of them, because that is the best way to learn about AI, because you know what matters to you, and by trying it out, you will find out the limits, and also you may be able to see how other people have done it already, so you can use their templates. um, a bit of AI literacy is helpful, especially the foundational concepts, because the tools will change over time, but the ideas of how to test these models and how to set the right pipelines, and especially the right questions to ask, because you can't really control something without understanding its pros and cons. And today's AI gives you an ability to actually use it to get better help, right? So start from there. And in case you are doing it at a larger scale in an organization or in a company, then make sure you have the right foundations. Like, and what I mean is that the quality of your data and the architecture, right? Because if you have legacy technology, you can't jump right at AI, because eventually you'll kind of run into the issue. Okay, how do I test it with my own data, or can we support this? The second important thing is that it's a lot of experimentation, a lot of proof of concepts, and only then you'll be able to come up with a strategy that works for you. You cannot really use the benchmarks the industry tells you, or you know numbers that you see in the media, because they're usually in an ideal state, and that doesn't really work for you. I want to tell you about one book that I was recently reading, and this I'll send you the name. It's called Intelligence. It's by Ethan Mollick. It's pretty good. It kind of talks about how do we work with AI to make it useful for us, and kind of talks about, because he's a professor, he kind of talks about that the number one casualty of AI has been education, homework and cheating and how to go around it, how to have students and show them how to use AI, but not lose your critical thinking and all that. That's going to be, I think, a debate that will go on for a long time. And there's like a ton of content everywhere, but sometimes I find that if there's too much content, that's also a problem. So I've been working on creating a collection of all these resources and putting them in my field notes. So if there is interest, happy to share that information with you, because I can't keep up with all this new stuff that's come from left and right. And a lot of that is just not even worth it. But the papers, all the papers that are being published, there's no really good yardstick for their quality, but people throw them out there, so it's becoming a real challenge of figuring out what's correct, what's not, what's high quality, what's not. So that's the challenge with AI. But um, if you are into online courses, then Coursera.org, it has some good courses, and I've seen there like AI for project managers and product managers and things like that. Um, it, it's better than many other resources and relatively inexpensive at about, I think, uh, probably 20 $50 a month or something, or $300 a year, that kind of thing. Because the problem with a lot of these technical books is that they get outdated really, really quick. So that's where we stand. So I think we have, if you have questions, happy to take them.
What do you consider actually to be the best sources of authoritative information about the state of AI? Because as you mentioned, there's just so much out there, and so much of it is really not only based on marketing material for a provider, but it's marketing material for someone who is trying to be an influencer. It's marketing material that someone who just has an opinion with no, background or no understanding, and clickbait of a various form really is what it becomes. And so that just creates all this noise. And what are the places that you generally think are quality for finding actual signal about the capabilities of the current state of AI? Because there's so many things it can do, but there's also so many people are just throwing all kinds of shade on it that it's just not possible.
Yes, yes. So I find that certain people, certain institutions, certain journalistic resources are helpful, but usually I try to not depend on any given one. So this uh, Coursera is one place where I go. Then there are certain labs at Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, and MIT which publish good work. There are certain YouTube channels that I'm happy to share.
Yeah,
Some of
please
the
do.
Yeah, some of the for some of the foundational concepts, some of the vendor stuff is pretty good too. You don't have to kind of trust them on their products, but some of their material is helpful for understanding the concepts behind it. For example, like how do large language models work? There are some good videos from
Yeah.
Google, from IBM, and there's no sales element in there. There's some professors in all they they've done some good writing and some good work. So it's a mix. I've certainly find that you know many of these like explanations and complicated concepts are best explained on a video at YouTube. So there are
Mhm.
some people that I follow there, um, and then for some of the leading researchers, they have their own favorite social media outlet. Some of these people are on X, some of them are on LinkedIn, but there are also a lot of people who are just marketing content. So their business is to kind of create a newsletter and
Paid marketing.
right.
Yeah.
But like Andrew Ng, for example, who was part of Coursera, he had a newsletter called The Batch. So I subscribe to that. I also read Wall Street Journal's, CIO newsletter. But take things with a grain of salt, because even with these newsletters, there's going to be uh, promoted content, but usually it's
Huh.
clearly marked. And there's certainly, a race to kind of control and dominate AI. So
Yeah.
you can see some patterns from coming from certain players and certain vendors where, they favor certain type of regulation or certain policies. But I think from a purely learning perspective, there are a lot of these good free material that's available, and that's why I tried to kind of um, curate and just put it in my notes, because I also have the same challenge that if I don't do that, then a month later I'll forget where to go to look up something in case. And these days things change so quickly that some of the material that I collected 3 months ago is no longer useful because something much better is there. So I'm right now I'm thinking of doing a whole set of slides for agentic AI, because I feel like it's at a point where it's worth spending a couple of days doing that, just so that I have a basic collection of information about the key idea, what are some of the initial implementation, what are the known issues. But as soon as I finish that slide deck, it will become outdated, because I'll have to change something 2 weeks later, because there's breakthroughs, there are different things. Um, and so for people who are in this industry, there is also tools such as Google's uh, Notebook LM, where you can throw in
Mhm.
research papers and it will automatically create a summary and a podcast. So if you are into text to speech, this is simply amazing of how good the quality of the AI generated speech is. It's very human-like. Now, the text that it creates may not be 100% factually correct or all that, but it does save you a lot of time as a first draft.
Sure. Sure. So one of the other things that I've always wondered, and I'm sure this is getting proved out in the real world, but one of the early lessons we had in computers and computer science with the traditional development model is, the problem of stacking new systems on top of old ones can create some very, very horrifically bad outcomes, as there's lessons in that from medical device, systems that we're doing, like radiation therapy control, where they had taken components from a previous version of the machine and incorporated it into the new and just wrote extensions, and that ended up killing some people because it wasn't purpose built, it wasn't tested properly, it wasn't written for the new equipment. So I'm just seeing all of this talk about, well, you've got the LLM and it's going to then use these different machine learning, deep learning models to do some other research and some other things. And I was thinking about, just the other day I was listening to Rogan, and he had a neuroscientist on who said, well, these people published this paper and built work on top of it, and it turned out the paper was a fraud. And so now you have all this neuroscience for the last 20 years that cites this fraudulent set of papers, actually, that was done by the same guy. And so you've got this compounding effect. Well, you actually can probably straighten out that faster in the community of scientists than you can in the AI. Right? You can immediately tell the scientists all of this work is suspect, it's flagged. But you've got an LLM out there that was trained on data, 6 months ago, and it doesn't have that context. And as you mentioned, context is absolutely everything when you're dealing with computing. And now you have this compounding effect of bad information or just slightly bad enough that it can have catastrophic impacts. And in the case of that radiation machine, it was just being off a few millimeters, killed people,
100%.
Yeah. So I'm just, I worry about that. I wonder if you know of anything that's been studied on that, or if there's been any work done on that to kind of, assign some sort of risk factor that could be impacted based on certain criteria. I thought about doing the research and writing a paper on it, but I have a day job.
Yeah, we're kind of at the top of the hour, so we just want to
I'm sorry.
give Babar a quick minute
It's a
to wrap
problem.
up.
It's a huge problem, and there's really no good solution because replicating some of the research is hard, and people are going for speed, and they just want to publish things, and it's really hard to kind of validate them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well,
Great.
thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, Babar, and maybe we can have you back at another time if you're willing. And I think the group would enjoy that. And so, guys, we'll kind of next week we'll kind of talk about what we learned here and heard, and see what some additional topics we'd want to pursue would be.
Yeah. Just feel free to connect and send any questions. Follow up.
Yeah, we'll look forward to getting your slides when you've
Babar.
done, Babar. I'll pass
thank
them out
you.
to the group.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you very much.
All right.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.